I found out my sister spent 8 years sharing family secrets and made up stories about me with my partners to make them leave me. She recently confessed she doesn't want to share me with anyone. I'm sitting here at 2 a.m. writing this because I literally cannot sleep after what happened today. My hands are still shaking. I'm 29 and I've been wondering for years why every single relationship I've had has ended the same way, with guys suddenly becoming distant, asking weird questions about my past, and then ghosting me or breaking up over things that made no sense. Today I finally got my answer, and it's so much worse than I ever imagined. Let me start from the beginning. I have a younger sister who's 26. We've always been close, or at least I thought we were. She's always been the more outgoing one, super charming, the type who can walk into a room and instantly become everyone's best friend. I'm more reserved, prefer smaller groups, take time to open up to people. Growing up, everyone always commented on how different we were, but I never thought much of it. The pattern started when I was 21. I'd been dating this guy for about 6 months, things were getting serious, and then suddenly he started acting weird. He'd make comments about how I was probably hiding things from him, ask if I had trust issues, stuff like that. When I asked where this was coming from, he'd just say he'd heard things but wouldn't elaborate. Eventually he broke up with me, saying he couldn't be with someone who wasn't honest with him. I was devastated and confused because I had no idea what he was talking about. This exact same scenario played out 5 more times over the years. Different guys, same pattern. Things would be going great, then suddenly they'd start acting suspicious of me, making comments about my character or my past, and then they'd end things. Each time I'd be left wondering what I did wrong, what I could have said or done differently. My sister was always there to comfort me after these breakups. She'd bring me ice cream, let me cry on her shoulder, tell me those guys didn't deserve me anyway. She seemed genuinely upset for me each time, which is why what I discovered today is so absolutely mind-blowing. About 2 years ago, I started dating someone new. Let's call him M. Things were different with M. He was more direct, more communicative. When he started getting those same weird vibes about 6 months in, instead of just pulling away, he actually talked to me about it. He told me my sister had been messaging him on social media, and some of the things she'd shared about me were concerning him. I was confused but asked him to show me the messages. My sister had told him that I had a gambling problem that I was hiding, that I'd stolen money from our parents in the past, and that I had anger issues that I took medication for. None of this was true. I'd never gambled more than buying a scratch-off ticket occasionally, never stolen anything from anyone, and definitely wasn't on any medication for anger issues. When I confronted my sister about it, she got defensive and said she was just looking out for M, making sure he knew what he was getting into. She said she'd exaggerated some things, but only because she was worried about me getting hurt again. She cried and apologized, said she'd never do anything like that again. I was hurt, but I believed her. She's my sister and she seemed genuinely sorry. M and I talked it through, and he decided to give our relationship another chance since he could see how shocked and hurt I was by what my sister had done. But the damage was done. There was always this underlying tension, this feeling that he was watching me for signs of the problems my sister had invented. We broke up 8 months later. After that relationship ended, I started paying more attention to my sister's behavior. I noticed she always seemed to find ways to become friends with whoever I was dating. She'd add them on social media, comment on their posts, find excuses to hang out when I brought them around. I thought she was just being friendly and trying to get to know the people who were important to me. I tried dating again, but the same pattern continued. Guys would start acting weird after a few months, making comments about things they'd heard about me. I started feeling like there was something fundamentally wrong with me, like I was giving off some kind of red flag that I couldn't see but everyone else could. My parents weren't much help when I tried to talk to them about it. They'd just say that dating was hard, that I needed to be patient, that the right person would come along eventually. When I mentioned that I thought my sister might be interfering somehow, they'd brush it off as sibling rivalry or say I was being paranoid. The breaking point came 3 months ago when I started seeing someone new. This time I decided to be more careful. I didn't introduce him to my family right away, didn't post about him on social media, tried to keep things more private until I felt more secure in the relationship. But somehow my sister still found out about him. I came home one day to find her going through my phone while I was in the shower. She claimed she was just looking for the takeout menu I'd saved in my photos, but I knew she was lying. A few weeks later, I noticed she'd somehow found his social media accounts and had started following him. I confronted her again, and this time she didn't even try to deny it. She said she had a right to know who I was spending time with, that she was just being protective. When I told her she needed to stop interfering in my relationships, she got angry and said I was being selfish, that I was choosing guys over my own sister. That's when things got really bad. She started showing up at places she knew I'd be with him, creating awkward situations where she'd monopolize the conversation or make comments designed to embarrass me. She'd text him separately, asking him to hang out without me, saying she wanted to get to know my friends better. I could see him getting uncomfortable with the whole situation, and I knew it was only a matter of time before he decided it was too much drama and walked away. I felt so helpless, like I was trapped in this cycle that I couldn't break out of. 2 weeks ago, things came to a head when I found out my sister had told him that I'd been engaged before and had left my fiancé at the altar. This was completely untrue. I've never been engaged to anyone. But she'd made up this whole elaborate story about how I'd gotten cold feet and disappeared on my wedding day, leaving this poor guy heartbroken and humiliated. When I confronted her about this lie, she finally snapped and told me the truth. She screamed at me that she was tired of watching me get into relationships and forget about her. She said every time I started dating someone, I'd spend less time with her, and she hated feeling like she came second to some guy. She told me she'd been doing this for years, not just with recent boyfriends but going all the way back to when I was 21. She'd been systematically sabotaging every relationship I'd had by feeding my partners lies and manipulative stories designed to make them question my character and trustworthiness. I was so shocked I couldn't even respond at first. 8 years of failed relationships, 8 years of wondering what was wrong with me, 8 years of feeling like I was fundamentally unlovable, and it was all because my own sister couldn't stand the thought of sharing my attention with anyone else. She kept going, telling me about all the different lies she'd told different guys over the years. She told one that I had a drinking problem, another that I was secretly married, another that I cheated on all my previous boyfriends. She'd created fake social media accounts to send anonymous messages to some of them, sharing screenshots of conversations I'd supposedly had about not taking the relationship seriously. The worst part was how calculated it all was. She'd study each guy, figure out what their insecurities or deal breakers were, and then craft her lies specifically to hit those pressure points. If a guy seemed particularly honest and straightforward, she'd focus on making me seem deceptive. If someone was family-oriented, she'd create stories about me being disrespectful to our parents or not caring about family values. I felt like my entire adult life had been a lie. All those times I blamed myself for relationships failing, all the self-doubt and questioning, all the nights I'd stayed up wondering what I'd done wrong, it was all because my sister couldn't handle the idea of me being happy with someone else. The guy I'd been seeing recently ended things the next day. He said he couldn't deal with the family drama and didn't know what to believe anymore. I couldn't even blame him. The whole situation was insane, and he'd been caught in the middle of something he never should have had to deal with. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since I posted this, and I wanted to update everyone on what's happened since then. First, thank you to everyone who responded. Reading your comments and messages really helped me realize that I wasn't crazy and that what my sister did was absolutely not normal sibling behavior. After I posted this, I decided I needed to take some time to really process everything and figure out what I wanted to do. I've been staying with a friend because I couldn't stand being in the same house as my sister, and honestly, I needed space to think without her trying to manipulate the situation further. The first thing I did was reach out to a few of my ex-boyfriends. I know it sounds weird, but I needed to understand the full scope of what she'd done. I managed to get in touch with 3 of them, and what they told me was even worse than I'd imagined. The guy I dated when I was 23 told me that my sister had actually created a fake dating profile using my photos and had been messaging him from it, pretending to be me talking to other guys. She'd screenshot those fake conversations and sent them to him as proof that I was cheating. I had no idea this had even happened. Another ex told me that my sister had called him crying one night, saying she was worried about me because I'd been talking about hurting myself. She'd convinced him that I was unstable and potentially dangerous and that he should probably distance himself for his own safety. This was completely fabricated. I've never had any thoughts of self-harm, and I certainly never said anything like that to her. The third guy I spoke to said my sister had shown up at his workplace one day, claiming she was concerned about me and wanted to make sure he was treating me well. But instead of checking on my well-being, she'd spent the entire conversation telling him stories about my supposed past relationships, painting me as someone who was manipulative and used men for money. Hearing all of this made me realize that what she'd confessed to me was just the tip of the iceberg. She hadn't just been passively sharing lies when opportunities arose. She'd been actively hunting down my boyfriends and creating elaborate schemes to destroy my relationships. I also found out that she'd been doing this with my friendships too, though to a lesser extent. A few friends had mentioned over the years that my sister had said things to them that made them question my loyalty or trustworthiness. I'd always brushed it off as miscommunication or misunderstandings, but now I realized it was all part of the same pattern. Meanwhile, my parents finally started taking the situation seriously when I showed them some of the evidence I'd gathered. My mom was horrified when she realized the extent of what my sister had been doing, and my dad admitted that they'd dismissed my concerns too quickly in the past. But here's where things get really complicated. My sister has been telling everyone that I'm having some kind of mental breakdown and that I'm making up stories about her to justify my own relationship failures. She's been crying to our extended family, claiming that I've been emotionally abusing her and that she's afraid of me. Some of our relatives believe her version of events, especially since she's always been more charismatic and better at telling stories than I am. It's created this horrible split in our family where people are taking sides, and I feel like I'm reliving the same gaslighting experience all over again, just on a larger scale. The guy I was dating when all this came out reached out to me last week. He said he'd been thinking about everything that happened and wanted to apologize for how he'd handled things. He told me that after he'd had time to process it, he realized how manipulative and calculated my sister's behavior had been, and he felt bad for not seeing through it at the time. We talked for hours about what had happened, and he admitted that he'd started to have doubts about the things my sister had told him even before everything came out. He said there were inconsistencies in her stories, and they never quite matched up with the person he'd gotten to know when he was with me. He asked if I'd be interested in giving our relationship another try, now that we both understood what had really been happening. Part of me wanted to say yes because I'd really cared about him, but I realized I need to focus on healing from all of this before I can even think about dating again. The hardest part of all this has been accepting that the sister I thought I knew never really existed. The person who comforted me after breakups, who seemed to care about my happiness, who I trusted with everything, that was all an act. The real her was someone who was willing to destroy my chance at love and happiness rather than deal with her own insecurity and jealousy. I keep thinking about all the times she held me while I cried over failed relationships, all the times she told me those guys didn't deserve me, all the times she promised me that the right person would come along eventually. She was literally consoling me for pain that she had caused, and she never showed any sign of guilt or remorse. Update 2. 2 months have passed since my last update, and I honestly didn't think I'd be writing another one, but some major developments have happened that I felt I needed to share. My sister has escalated her behavior in ways I never could have predicted. After I started telling family members the truth about what she'd done, she apparently decided that playing the victim wasn't working well enough, so she switched tactics. 3 weeks ago, I found out she'd been contacting my workplace, claiming to be a concerned family member who was worried about my mental health. She told my supervisor that I'd been having violent outbursts at home and that she was afraid I might become dangerous at work too. She suggested they should keep an eye on me and maybe consider whether I was fit to continue in my position. Fortunately, my supervisor has worked with me for 4 years and knows me well enough to realize this was completely out of character. Instead of taking my sister's claim seriously, she called me into her office to ask if everything was okay at home and if there was anything the company could do to support me. When I explained the situation, my supervisor was absolutely appalled. She told me that what my sister was doing could be considered harassment and suggested I might want to consider legal action. She also assured me that my job was safe and that they wouldn't be taking any action based on my sister's false claims. But that wasn't the end of it. My sister also started creating fake social media accounts to spread rumors about me online. She'd comment on my posts with these accounts, making it look like multiple people were calling me out for various things. She'd post in local community groups, warning people about my supposed violent tendencies and claiming I was a danger to be around. I only found out about this because a friend saw one of these posts and recognized enough details to realize it was about me. When I started looking into it, I discovered she'd created at least 6 different fake accounts over the past month, all for the purpose of damaging my reputation. The breaking point came when she contacted my landlord, claiming that I'd been threatening her and that she was concerned I might become violent toward other tenants in my building. She told him I'd been making threats about hurting people who cross me and that he should consider whether I was a liability to have as a tenant. My landlord called me immediately because he was confused. He said the woman on the phone claimed to be my sister and said she was trying to protect me, but everything she was saying made it sound like she was trying to get me evicted. When I explained what was happening, he was shocked and told me he'd never received a call like that before. That's when I realized that my sister had moved beyond just trying to sabotage my relationships. She was now actively trying to destroy my entire life. She was attempting to get me fired, evicted, and socially isolated, all because I'd finally stood up to her and exposed what she'd been doing. I decided I had to take legal action. I consulted with a lawyer who specializes in harassment cases, and she told me that what my sister was doing definitely constituted stalking and harassment under our state's laws. She said I had grounds for a restraining order and possibly criminal charges, depending on how far my sister was willing to push things. The lawyer helped me document everything, all the fake social media accounts, the calls to my workplace and landlord, the lies she'd told my ex-boyfriends, everything. We also gathered statements from people who could testify about her behavior, including my supervisor, my landlord, and several of my ex-boyfriends who were willing to go on record about what she'd done. When I filed for the restraining order, my sister finally seemed to realize she'd gone too far. She showed up at my friend's house where I'd been staying, crying and begging me not to go through with it. She said she'd been stressed and wasn't thinking clearly, that she never meant for things to go this far. But here's the thing that really got to me: even in her apology, she was still trying to manipulate me. She kept saying things like how she'd only been trying to protect me, how she was worried about me getting hurt by the wrong guys, how everything she'd done came from a place of love. She couldn't even take full responsibility without trying to justify her actions or make it seem like she'd had noble intentions. It made me realize that she still didn't understand the magnitude of what she'd done, or maybe she understood it but just didn't care. I went through with filing the restraining order, and it was granted. My sister is now legally required to stay away from me, my workplace, and my home. She's also not allowed to contact me directly or indirectly, which means no more fake social media accounts or attempts to reach me through other people. My parents have been struggling with all of this. My mom keeps saying she can't believe one of her daughters would do something like this to the other, and my dad has been trying to stay neutral, which honestly makes me feel like he still doesn't fully grasp how serious this situation is. Some of our extended family members have started to realize that my sister's version of events didn't add up, especially after she started making increasingly wild claims about my behavior that obviously weren't true. A few cousins have reached out to apologize for initially believing her stories and to offer their support. But the most unexpected development happened last week. The guy I'd been dating when everything first came out called me and asked if we could meet for coffee. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking over the past few months, and he wanted to talk about everything that had happened. When we met, he told me he'd been researching psychological manipulation and family abuse patterns, trying to understand what I'd been through. He said he felt terrible about how he'd handled things initially and wanted to make sure I knew that none of what happened was my fault. He also told me something that really surprised me. Apparently, my sister had reached out to him again a few weeks ago, trying to convince him that I was having a breakdown and making up stories about her. But this time, instead of believing her, he'd seen right through her manipulation tactics. He said talking to her again had made him realize how calculated and deliberate her behavior was, and how she'd probably been using similar tactics on all my previous boyfriends. He told me he was amazed that I'd maintained my sanity and sense of self through years of that kind of psychological abuse. We talked for 3 hours, and it was the first time in months that I felt like someone truly understood what I'd been through. He didn't try to minimize what had happened or suggest that I should forgive my sister for the sake of family harmony. He just listened and validated my experience. At the end of our conversation, he asked if I'd be interested in trying to rebuild what we'd had, but taking things very slowly and making sure I felt safe and supported throughout the process. He said he understood if I wasn't ready for that, but he wanted me to know that he'd learned from his mistakes and wouldn't let anyone manipulate him into doubting me again. I told him I needed more time to think about it, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the possibility of having a healthy relationship with someone who actually saw and understood me for who I really am. Final update. It's been 6 months since I got the restraining order against my sister, and I wanted to give everyone a final update on how things have turned out. The restraining order has been a lifesaver. My sister tested it a few times in the beginning. She had friends contact me on her behalf, created new social media accounts to try to reach me, and even showed up at places she knew I'd be. Each time, I reported it to the police, and eventually she got the message that I was serious about enforcing the order. About 3 months ago, she apparently moved to a different state. I found out through my mom, who told me that my sister had gotten a job opportunity elsewhere and decided to start fresh. I suspect the real reason was that she'd burned too many bridges locally and needed to escape the consequences of her behavior. My parents and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. My mom has been going to support groups for families affected by psychological abuse, and she's starting to understand how serious what my sister did really was. My dad is still struggling with it more, but he's at least stopped trying to push me to reconcile with my sister. The hardest part for my parents has been accepting that they enabled my sister's behavior for years by dismissing my concerns and treating it like normal sibling rivalry. My mom has apologized multiple times for not taking me seriously when I tried to tell them what was happening. As for my personal life, I did decide to give things another try with the guy who reached out to me. We took it incredibly slowly. We spent months just talking and rebuilding trust before we even considered ourselves to be dating again. He's been patient and understanding throughout the whole process, and he's never made me feel like I was damaged goods because of what I'd been through. We've been officially back together for 3 months now, and it's unlike any relationship I've ever had. For the first time in my adult life, I'm with someone who knows the real me, not some distorted version created by my sister's lies. There's no underlying tension, no waiting for the other shoe to drop, no wondering what secrets are being shared behind my back. He's also helped me recognize some of the ways my sister's manipulation had affected my behavior in relationships. I'd become hyper-vigilant about how my partners were reacting to me, constantly scanning for signs that they were losing interest or starting to doubt me. I'd developed habits of over-explaining myself and being defensive about things that didn't require defense. Learning to trust that someone could know the real me and still choose to be with me has been both healing and terrifying. There are still moments when I catch myself waiting for him to suddenly turn cold or start asking weird questions about my past. But those moments are becoming less frequent as time goes on. I've also been working on rebuilding my sense of self outside of relationships. For years, my sister's sabotage had made me define my worth by whether I could maintain a romantic relationship. Now I'm learning to value myself as a complete person, regardless of my relationship status. I've reconnected with some old friends who I'd lost touch with over the years, and I've been building new friendships too. It's been liberating to form connections with people without worrying about what lies might be told about me or how those relationships might be undermined. My career has been going well too. My supervisor has been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal, and I ended up getting a promotion a few months ago. It felt amazing to achieve something positive after months of feeling like my sister was trying to tear down every aspect of my life. I still have moments where I feel angry about all the time that was stolen from me, all the relationships that were destroyed, all the years I spent thinking there was something fundamentally wrong with me. But I'm trying to focus on moving forward rather than dwelling on what was lost. The most important thing I've learned through all of this is that family isn't just about blood relations, it's about the people who genuinely care about your well-being and want to see you succeed. My sister may be my biological family, but she was never truly on my side. The friends who supported me through this crisis, the boyfriend who was willing to work through the complicated situation, the coworkers who had my back. Those are the people who make up my real family. I know some people reading this might think I was too harsh in cutting my sister out of my life completely. They might believe that family should always come first, or that people deserve second chances, or that I should have tried harder to work things out. But here's what I've come to understand: you can't have a relationship with someone who is actively working to destroy your life. You can't build trust with someone who has spent years systematically undermining your happiness and then refuses to take full responsibility for their actions. My sister didn't just make a few mistakes or let jealousy get the better of her occasionally. She created and executed elaborate plans to sabotage my relationships over the course of 8 years. She lied to my employers and landlord to try to destroy my livelihood and housing. She created fake online personas to damage my reputation in the community. Those aren't the actions of someone who loves you but has some issues to work through. Those are the actions of someone who sees you as an obstacle to their own happiness and is willing to destroy you to get what they want. I don't know if my sister will ever truly understand the magnitude of what she did, or if she'll ever feel genuine remorse for the pain she caused. But that's not my responsibility anymore. My responsibility is to protect myself and build a life surrounded by people who actually care about my well-being. For anyone reading this who sees similarities to their own situation, whether it's a family member, friend, or partner who seems to consistently undermine your happiness, please trust your instincts. If you feel like you're going crazy, if you can't understand why good things in your life keep falling apart, if you notice patterns that don't make sense, dig deeper. Sometimes the people who claim to love us the most are the ones doing the most damage. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those relationships, even when it's family, even when it's hard, even when other people don't understand. I'm 30 now, and for the first time in nearly a decade, I feel like I'm living my authentic life. I'm in a healthy relationship, I have genuine friendships, my career is thriving, and I wake up each morning without wondering what fresh hell my sister might have created for me overnight. It took losing almost everything to realize that what I thought was my life was actually just an elaborate prison my sister had built around me. Breaking free was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most important. I'm not sharing this story for sympathy or validation, I'm sharing it because I know there are other people out there living in similar prisons, wondering why their lives keep falling apart despite their best efforts. If this helps even one person recognize what's happening to them and find the strength to break free, then everything I went through will have been worth it. The person who spent years systematically destroying my happiness is no longer in my life. The people who genuinely care about me are still here. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.